Welcome back, everybody, to Speaking of Meaning. I am Ibrahim, and today I will welcome back my good friend, Neil Greenspan. Neil, welcome back to the show.
Thanks. It's great to be back. I'm honored to be not only the first, but the second time guest too.
Well, welcome back, my friend. I remember our first episode together, and you were my first guest. We talked broadly about communication. But I know that you are an expert on pitching, and you have a company called Pitch PhD.
That's correct.
And so you're here back today to tell us about pitching, teach us about pitching, and hopefully together with the listeners, we can become better pitchers.
Yep. Okay.
All right.
Let's hope people can get something out of it. I'm looking forward to the discussion for sure.
Well, good, because the first episode was very popular. And as I said before, we talked broadly about communication. And you did touch the surface when it came to pitching. But I find it very fascinating because I know that how you present, how you deliver ideas is very important. But pitching is not my area of expertise. So you are the expert here today.
Okay. Sounds good.
How did you end up becoming an expert on pitching?
So my story starts probably when I finished school. Actually, when I finished my MBA, and I got into marketing. And the companies that I worked for at the time, this was when I was living in New York. The companies that I was working for at the time, we were never the least expensive option. In fact, we were almost always the most expensive option, which meant from very early on in my career, I needed to learn how to explain the value of a product or service and not solely rely on being the least expensive. Mm-hmm. And what that meant was that as I advanced in my career, and even though I was in marketing, I was always the right-hand person for salespeople. Sure, I sat at the desk and did my work, but I went out on sales calls. I produced materials directly for salespeople. And again, it was always around the value. When I moved to Sweden and found myself in a situation where I wasn't really getting any jobs that were permanent and that I found interesting, I started networking. And I ended up at an event called Startup Dojo, which 12 years later, it's actually still going on down in Malmö, about 30 minutes from where I live. And at Startup Dojo, this was where entrepreneurs could pitch their idea. And I was there one night and I heard a young man trying to explain his idea. Mm-hmm. And in his pitch, I could tell he was a really bright guy. Mm. But the way he was describing things, it wasn't very clear. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that I had a confused look on my face. So I looked around and I saw there were a lot of people who were, wait, what? And some of the questions were, hey, man, I don't get it. And during that question and answer session specifically, I said, you know what? This guy's pretty bright. I bet you his idea is pretty good because you could pick up at least something from it. But he's not very good at explaining his idea. And I think that's going to limit his chances of success. And then I said, oh, you know what, though? That's what I'm good at. I'm good at taking complex things, right? Or non-complex things and making them easy to understand, but and then perhaps most importantly, making people understand what the value is of what it is that you're doing. So in that instant, at that time, I was just going by Perfect Your Pitch because now I have kind of two legs. Pitch PhD is the main brand, but Perfect Your Pitch is when I say in person, it could be through video calls as well, but it's the personal coaching and training. Can be one-on-one, can be in workshops. I'm flexible and I do pitch training and coaching in all different situations. But then a few years back, I created an online course, a digital course, and that goes under the brand of Pitch Ninja. So Pitch PhD is kind of hopefully the outcome of what you get either from working from me or by taking my digital online course. But when you talk about the specific products, it's Perfect Your Pitch is the in-person individual coaching. And then Pitch Ninja is for those of you who would prefer to be trained digitally through videos. And then there are exercises with that as well to get better.
Okay.
And 14 years later, here I am, still doing it.
Is a pitch about persuasion, or is it about explaining an idea, or is it both?
So I would say that what differentiates, let's say, a pitch from a presentation is when we're talking now about me speaking to you as a pitch, right? Because sometimes we send a pitch, a PowerPoint deck or a PDF or something like that. But when we talk about doing it verbally, again, whether it's online or in person, a pitch has a specific purpose, and persuasion is a good word for that. So my definition of a good pitch is getting the person that you're speaking to nod their head when you're asking them to do something, right? So it's so you could be pitching to 400 people, but maybe there are only 30 people in that audience who might be your customers if it's a customer pitch. Because whether it's a customer pitch or an investor pitch, they're quite different. But persuasion is still what you're looking to do. Now, what you're persuading them to do is quite different too. Even customer pitches, they could be different depending on the situation. If you're standing up on stage and you're not really, let's say, talking to them in a room, the pitch needs to be much more broad. And the follow-up will be something like, maybe go to our website so you can see a video on how we demonstrate the product. Or it could be contact me. If you have the ability for slides, you might want to put an email address up on the slides. And that's called a call to action. And that call to action, sorry if I keep touching my ears, my ear pods kind of slide out quite often. But it's called a call to action. And what you're trying to do is get somebody to say, yeah, I need to check out that website because I really want to see the demo of this product that they just explained to me, right? So you do need to explain some of it as well. But you need to remember the goal, and then how you reach the goal. For me, that's where the fun in pitching comes, because I have structures and I have tips and I can say, do this, don't do that. But the bottom line is that if I tell you don't do this, do that, and you do this and you don't do that, but your pitch is still successful, good on you. So because for me, it's all about the outcome. It's much less about how you get there. I can say that there are some rules that, when they've been broken, I can honestly say have never led to a successful pitch. But most of the rules, most of the tips, they're flexible because situations are different. And then the bottom line is that I could give you a pitch, right? And then maybe tomorrow I could talk to John and you could love it. You could say, oh man, this is great. Neil, where do I sign up? And then tomorrow I could give the same exact pitch to John, and John might go, huh? What? Right? And that's okay. The objective of the pitch isn't to get everybody to nod along. It's to get the people that you're trying to nod along to nod along. It doesn't have to be everyone.
Okay, so basically getting to a yes.
Getting to a yes. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Can I use that?
And so what I'm thinking about is, then what is a good pitch or a perfect pitch? I know there's nothing called a perfect pitch, but what is a good pitch, would you say?
I think I answered that. A perfect pitch is, and I'm going to use your line, is when you get to the yes. Because again, I have structures, I have tips, I have things that I can advise, or that I do advise my customers with, and I'll call them customers. And if they say, no, I think I'd rather do it this way, and they still get to the yes, then that's a good pitch, because that's the goal of a pitch. So I think I started going down this road before, but I went a little bit off. So a pitch is a type of a presentation, but not all presentations are pitches. Sometimes presentation is simply to inform, right? Presentations can also be used to entertain, right? Now a pitch part of a pitch you can inform, you can entertain, it could be interesting to listen to you. But what makes a pitch different is what you said, that it's about persuasion. Okay. All presentations aren't necessarily about persuasion, but a pitch is.
a pitch is always about, like you said, getting to yes. But
Yeah,
I guess, a good pitch, do you have a certain structure?
I do.
Do you start with a problem and then you introduce a solution?
I do. So when I first started going to pitch events, after I kind of announced myself as a pitch coach, I went to an event called Pitcher's Corner. And at Pitcher's Corner, the structure that they taught was something called NABC, which was created by an organization at Stanford University called Stanford Research Institute.
Did you say
And
NBC?
no, NABC. NABC.
Yeah, thank you.
So, and those stand for need, approach, benefits, competition. Okay. So, and when I first heard it, I was, at that point, I wasn't leading it. I was kind of sitting in a chair, just giving feedback. And I was an entrepreneur. I fancied myself an entrepreneur as well. And I kind of crossed my arms and I'm like, structure? Nah, I'm an entrepreneur. We don't need no stinking structures. We eat structures for breakfast. And I can tell you, I was wrong. I'm a 180-degree convert, because what that structure does, what that NABC structure does, is it gives you the frame. What you then paint on the canvas, your actual pitch, you can be very creative, right? What that frame does, though, is it ensures that you focus on the most important things. So Stanford University is positioned in the heart of Silicon Valley, right? And the way the NABC came about, so the myth goes, the urban legend, is that, when you go to Silicon Valley and you're waiting in line at Starbucks to get your half pump, triple, decaf, latte, upside down, whipped cream, no foam, you could be pitched by an entrepreneur, an idea. Now, I have a lot of family, actually. Most of my family lives in and near Silicon Valley. And I've been in Starbucks there and other coffee shops. I've never been pitched. So maybe people don't like the way I look or whatever. But they were worried that there would be people like that gentleman I told you about at Startup Dojo that were bright and probably had really good ideas, but were not good at communicating them. So they gave them a structure and they said, look, even if you're not the world's greatest communicator, if you tell people this is the problem that we fix, the need, okay? And then in the approach, this is how we fix it. Not getting technical, right? If you have a technical solution, of course the technology is important. You don't have a solution without it. However, especially early on, if you get too deep into tech speak, you get people like me who are not technical and we go, what? I don't know what you're talking about. But if you explain the approach more as to how your solution works for your user, right? Then it gets people interested. Yeah, I do have that problem. And wow, that sounds like a great solution for that problem. And then, especially if it's a short pitch, we call an elevator pitch, right? If you stick to maybe 2, maximum 3 benefits, and you speak, I call this speaking in bullet points, right? We've all seen PowerPoint presentations where, that you write in bullet points. Well, in a short pitch especially, I train people to speak in bullet points. And then there's the rule of 3, which for whatever reason, 1 is not enough, 2, 3 is good, 4 is too many. So the rule of 3. So if you can communicate 3 benefits, not features, but benefits.
Benefits, yeah.
Quickly, then people understand, wow, this sounds something. I always use a mobile phone as my example when I talk about benefits, because all mobile phones have chips. Again, as a non-technical guy, I don't know what my chip is. But I would even be willing to bet that the people who do know what chip is in their phone and do care about what chip is in their phone, they care about the benefits that the chip gives. It's not really what the chip is, it's what that chip represents. It's fast, boom, I press the icon, my app opens up. It's stable. I can have 27 apps open on my phone and my phone doesn't crash. And it's not power thirsty. So I can be out all day and not have to worry about charging my phone, right? So those are 3 benefits of the chip. The chip is the feature, and a lot of people pitch the features. But, if I told you, Iba, I got the X963 A12 chip in this, and then I move on, you'd be like, huh? What? I don't know why my earbuds keep falling out. Sorry about that. You don't care. You don't know what that means. But if I tell you, and the chip in here is super fast, you can have 27 apps open, your phone doesn't crash, and it's not going to drain your battery. You can actually go 2 days without charging your phone. That means something to you. And the C stands for competition. And the C is interesting because The way I coach is I say, if you do a really good job explaining the N, the need, the problem that you solve, and I understand how you solve it, the A, the approach, and then you give me 3 quick fire benefits, I don't really need a C, with one exception. And that exception is, now if you want to have a C and if you want to tell people why you're better, go for it. It's just, especially in a short pitch, in an elevator pitch, it's not always necessary. But the one time that you should always have about the competition and why you're better, and I say that specifically, shouldn't talk about why they're worse, you should talk about why you're better, because then the focus is on you. But when you do need a competition is when you're going into a market where there are clear market leaders. So again, if we take a mobile phone, cell phone for you American listeners, as an example, then you're going up against the giants, right? You're going up against Samsung and Apple. And yes, there are others, but let's just say those two. But if you say to somebody, and my new mobile phone, unlike what's out there today, you can change the battery. The structure is made to last through up to 4 years, and we use no rare earth minerals, so it's much more friendly to the planet. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe some people don't care about that. Fair enough, right? But you've clearly distinguished yourself for people that do care about that. So, if you're struggling with, let's say, maybe going a little bit too long, consider making sure that your N, your A, and your Bs are super sharp and in a row, and then I understand why you're a better choice than the competitors. So big fan of structure now, Iba, for sure.
Oh, that's good. So what I hear you say, Neil, is the N stands for need, A, approach, B, benefit, and C, competition. And the need, you basically address the problem, right?
Yeah, correct.
And the approach, how you solve it.
Mm-hmm.
The benefit is basically you list 2-3 benefits.
Yeah. And
so
again, stay clear of the feature. Stay clear of feature speak, right? It's not the chip. It's what the chip delivers for the user, the customer.
What it can deliver for the customer. And then the competition, don't talk about them. Talk about why you are better than the competition. Okay, great.
Exactly.
Great. That's
hey, you summed that
framework.
up you summed that up really well.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Very good explaining that. So now we've talked about what is a good pitch, and I hear you say it's getting to yes and also having a clear structure. And so do you see a lot of mistakes? And what are the most common mistakes pitchers make?
Oh yeah, I mean, I see mistakes all the time. If I didn't see mistakes, I'd be out of a job. So I guess the good thing about it is that even when somebody works with me and they get good, and it doesn't mean that they never make mistakes. Of course they make mistakes, and you can always tweak and make your pitch better. But there's always a new generation of entrepreneurs, of students coming along that need to learn pitching. So that's one good thing about being a pitch coach. I'll never run out of customers, out of people who need to learn this important skill. Yeah, mistakes. Sorry, I got lost there. Yeah, so I think one of the most common mistakes people make is they think that just because I'm standing on stage or I'm talking to you and you're listening, you're interested in what I have to say. So they'll come on and they'll go, "Hi, Ibba. Yeah, thanks for taking my call today. Yeah, I'm Neil. I work at Pitch PhD, and I help people learn how to pitch." Now, if you invited me to the call, chances are you're going to listen. But if it's, let's say, at a place where you're listening in the audience or something, your next thought is, "Man, I wonder how many likes I got on that photo of my breakfast I posted on Instagram this morning." Because you know this, right? And, your listeners don't yet, but I'll tell them that is that right. I'm from New York originally, and New Yorkers are rude. We're rude, nasty people. And so I tell people when I want to get my New Yorker on is nobody cares who you are or where you're from until you make them. So starting a pitch, instead of like the way that I just did, if I said, with my work as pitch coach at Pitch Coach, I've taught hundreds of startups that have raised hundreds of millions of dollars in funding and have exceeded sales even greater than that. Today, I'm going to talk about how I can help you learn the important skill of pitching. Isn't that a better opening? And I'll admit that's not a great opening because I just kind of did it on the fly. But I do believe you're more interested now in listening to me continue than in wondering how many likes you got.
It's much better. It's a much better opening.
So don't make that mistake, right? You know, even when I have slides, my first slide does not introduce me. My first slide introduces something that I believe the audience will find interesting. And then they'll go, aha. And then my next slide, I do introduce myself because hopefully at that point anyway, they do care who I am and where I'm from. So use the opportunity. It's called a hook. Use the opportunity, your first one or two sentences, if it's a really short pitch, or your first few sentences to hook the audience, okay? We all have mobile phones these days. They're the ultimate distraction machines, okay? It's your responsibility. Just because they're sitting in the audience doesn't mean they're going to listen. It's your responsibility to make them want to listen. And I would say that goes for any time you're presenting in front of an audience, whether it's a pitch or not, that you should hook the audience from, from the get-go, from the first few sentences. But in a pitch, considering your goal is to persuade somebody to do this by the end, I would go out on a limb and say it's even more important to ensure that you do that in a pitch. So that's a big mistake. And then another mistake, and I'll stop after this because there are a lot more that I could do. Because I work a lot of times with young entrepreneurs, and young doesn't necessarily mean how old they are. It could also mean where they are in the process. They use what I call weak language. And weak language. And this is especially true when they're talking to investors. And they're saying, well, we're going to try to see if we could possibly maybe do this. And yeah, we think that the market might be somewhere around, this amount. And after 18 years, maybe we could get 1% of that market. No, it's weak language, right?
Yeah, very weak.
I'm not saying to lie. Don't say you've done something if you haven't, but you're not trying to do anything, right? If you're going to revolutionize if your goal, if it says on your website, our goal is to revolutionize the mobile phone industry, that's what you should say in your pitch, right? You don't say that you have until you have, but you say that's what your goal is. Not, well, we're going to try to fix mobile phones, man, No. So don't use weak language. Be strong, believe in your idea. Because, good God, if you don't believe in your idea and you don't communicate that you believe in your idea, not only will customers not really have much faith in you, no investor will have faith in you.
Yeah. And just by that, no confidence and weak language, the other guy or the other girl might perhaps have an inferior product, but be more confident and appear to believe in their ideas strongly. Their ideas somehow is more attractive.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and again, this is not limited to pitching, but how you deliver your pitch, of course, is important, right? You need to show confidence. You need to be able to deliver it clearly. We're not going to go into, let's say, specific public speaking tips and tricks in this one. I think that's maybe a third visit for me if you want to explore that later on. But it's not that it's unimportant. I actually, again, because I'm usually called into the process fairly early, my work normally focuses on structure and content. I'm a firm believer that because that pitching is a process, and I don't think that's a radical idea or anything like that, right? By having a considering pitching as a process, you need to take it kind of one step at a time. Usain Bolt didn't, at 1 year old, he was just learning how to walk, not become the world's fastest man, right? So it's the same thing with pitching or presenting or even public speaking, but if we stick just to pitching, if you focus on your structure and your content and you get confident in that, your delivery will automatically be better. But if you're not confident in your structure and content, and when I say confident, I don't mean memorizing a script. I do not believe in memorizing a script. But if you're not confident in that, then it's really hard to get you to worry about vocal variety and body language, and if you're doing it up on stage presence, right? Because the only thing you're thinking about is, oh my God, what am I going to say next, right? So for me, my process very early on, I would say that 90 to 95% of what I coach on is content and structure. Because then when they get comfortable with that, then they can practice, right? And there are lots of different practicing tips. And when they practice in front of people, other people could say to them, hey, your pitch sounded really good, but you were kind of looking up here, or you had your hands in your pocket the whole time. You were standing too far back. I couldn't really hear you, right? And then they can kind of build from there. But I don't believe that any good pitch coach starts with, you need to make eye contact with the audience because if I'm looking at you, but I'm talking nonsense, it really isn't going to matter, is it?
Exactly. And you're touching on an important point here. You said confidence and believing in your ideas, believing in knowing the structure. It's like if somebody wants to ask you for money, time, or wants you to buy their product, if they don't believe in themselves and their product, it's instantly a turnoff.
Sure. Yeah, again, if I'm a customer, I'm going to give you money for your product. That's supposed to solve a problem or make my life easier in some way. If I'm an investor, I'm going to give you money because I believe that together we can make more money from that. That's an investor's job. So if you don't believe in your product or service, or you don't communicate that to me, why would I give you money? Why would I give you time?
And it's not about being perfect. You're talking about, we don't want somebody to be perfect. We want somebody to believe in their ideas, right?
Absolutely.
And when you say be confident, you don't mean don't be nervous, because being nervous is actually a good thing. It means you care. But at least be prepared and show us that you believe in your ideas.
Well, and the interesting part is that you and I speak in front of people a lot, and we still probably get nervous, at least in certain circumstances, right?
Yes.
So for us to expect somebody who doesn't speak in front of people a lot to not be nervous, it's not based in reality. But here's the interesting thing, and I go back to my last answer, is that be nervous. Like you said, it's a good thing. It means you care. But if the nerves start affecting your performance, well, then we have some work to do. But the more you prepare, right, the more comfortable you feel with your structure and content, the less effect those nerves will have on you. Because the thing you're going to be nervous about is standing up and talking. You're not going to be nervous about, oh my God, what am I going to say? Nah, you got that. You know what you're going to say. And again, not about memorizing a script, but it's the messages. So as long as the message is either the same or similar, then the words that I speak to you versus the words I speak to the next person I pitch to matter far less. It's the message that you receive from me that's far more important.
What do great pitchers understand about listeners that average ones don't?
Well, the first thing they do is they understand who their listener is. When I first started pitch training, I had one slide that was called the 10 Commandments of pitching. And commandment number 1 was know thy audience. So I have mentioned this already, that when you're pitching to a customer versus when you're pitching to an investor, it's a different pitch. Now that doesn't mean 100% of the content is different. I would say that on average, it's probably somewhere around 25 to 30%. I've never actually, put it down. But you still need to explain the need. You still need to explain the approach. But there's also a little bit more that an investor needs. So with the NABC, I've actually added 3 letters for an investor pitch. I won't go into them now. But if you don't understand who the audience is, then how are you going to create a pitch, right? If you're pitching at a big event and there's 400 people and it's just a general pitch, right? That's a different story. But if you are going to a company and you're going to pitch your new mobile phone idea, do you know if it's Barbara from sales who's going to be there, or is it Jim from accounting who's going to be there? Now, Barbara and Jim both work for the same company. They have different job titles. They have different interests, and they need to hear different value from what you're presenting. Now, if
Oh,
Barbara and Jim are going to be in the room together, well, then you need to expand it. You need to make sure that you cover both the points. But if you don't know that they're going to be there, you risk alienating one, if not both of them. Okay? So knowing who's going to be in the room, more important, what their roles are, so you know what their expectations are, that would be number one that good pitchers understand. And then number two is understanding that a pitch is a multifaceted communications tool. Many people, when they hear the word pitch, they've seen Shark's Tank or Dragon's Nest or Draknästet here in Sweden, right? And they think that a pitch is only something entrepreneurs use when they're begging investors for money. And that is one type of pitch. And for a lot of startups, it's an important type of pitch because they need that investment to build out their product. But there are far more uses for a pitch than just an investor pitch. So the second thing that a good pitcher knows is, what is the goal of this particular pitch? If it's an investor and I'm pitching from the stage, my goal is to make them curious to want to reach out to me to book a meeting. Okay, that's my goal. So I tell people, before you ever open your laptop, if it's an Apple, you got Keynote, right? If it's a Windows machine, you've got PowerPoint or whatever. And you start creating that presentation, you have to answer two questions. Who am I speaking to? And what's the goal of this pitch? If you answer those two questions and then start to create that particular pitch based on the answers of those two questions, I guarantee you that you will be further ahead than 90% of everybody else who's going to pitch to that audience and or to that investor.
okay. Is it common that people use the same pitch to different leaders, different audience members, and so forth?
I can tell you that some of the, should I use the word worst pitches? Let's say most confusing pitches have been, when I do pitch coaching and they pitch and then we give them feedback, including me, I will ask them, is this a customer pitch or an investor pitch? Now, there can be other pitches. So, for example, I just did a session yesterday and they were looking for a partner, right? Not really an investor and not a customer. They were looking for a partner. But they knew who their audience was. So they created a pitch that was especially benefits based for the partner that might be interested in it, in their particular idea, right? So when you, geez, now I forgot your question again. Sorry. I think I went off on a tangent.
It's if you see that people, do you see that people have the same pitch
Yes,
that they
sorry.
deliver to? Yeah.
So yes. So the most confusing pitches are when I ask that question and they say, oh, it's just to everybody. Because when you try to pitch to everybody, you don't reach anyone. You don't get to yes with anyone. Because if you're pitching to customers and you start talking about the market size and what you need for an investor, I don't care. I don't care if I'm the customer. I don't care that you're only in the MVP stage. I don't care that it's going to take you 3 years to get to market. Doesn't matter to me. I care about what can you do for me, right? You know, we're all selfish, right? Yeah, and yet if you have a job to do, because a lot of pitches are B2B, and if it's a B2C pitch, so, you know, to a customer, I still want to know, what can your product do for me, you know? In that case, it's usually, how do I save money or how do you make my life easier? But I've seen plenty of people try to use the same pitch regardless, and it falls flat. Not even 99 out of 100 times, 100 out of 100. And look, I'm not a fan of extra work. I'm not telling you, you know, create a brand new pitch every time you speak to somebody. But you should have a clear pitch on the customer side that you maybe tweak depending on who you're going to be speaking to, right? So you don't need to redo the whole thing. And if you are seeking for an investment, you're going to have a separate investor pitch. And they might be 70% the same, but it's the 30% in the investor pitch that will get an investor to say, if it's early in the process, yes, we should take this conversation further. Or if it's later in the process, okay, let's start talking about how we make this happen.
So what role does, because now you know the audience, you know what your goal is, you've prepared, you're confident in your subject, you feel good about the product, the service you have. What role do tension play when you are delivering your pitch? And what about emotions and storytelling?
Explain a little bit what you mean by tension. What role does tension play?
Well, usually when you try to elicit emotions, curiosity,
Hmm.
elicit
Hmm.
emotions, telling stories, and so forth.
Yeah. So I mean, storytelling is a can be a great tool to use when you're telling a pitch. Some of the best pitches I've ever seen have been because of a personal connection to the problem that they end up solving. And they a lot of times, again, because they're new to the process, they're worried about talking about their personal connection to it. But when they get down to it, and let's just say it's fixing a problem that their mother had the last time they were in the hospital. When they talk about it, I don't know if that's creating tension, but it's certainly creating a connection. So, um, we have all these acronyms, whether it's B2B or B2C or an investor pitch or B2G, the government, right? Whatever. But the bottom line is that everyone you're pitching to is a human being.
Mm,
Okay. And when you can connect on that level, you have a far greater chance of getting them to listen to you.
mm,
And if they listen to you and they're the right audience for you, you have a greater chance of getting to a yes. Now, if they're not the right audience, then maybe you should ask yourself, what am I doing in this room? Right. But, well, at least you got some good practice. But if you don't connect with them, your odds go much lower. So storytelling, I think, is a great way to do that. I like to use humor, right? I think it relaxes people.
mm,
I think that when you talk about something personal, right, it shows that you're a human being too,
mm.
and it also shows that maybe you're somebody that I can do business with, or that I can trust at least. When if you watch any of these, investment shows, you've probably seen sometimes the shark or the dragon. They say to, Iba, wow, yeah, your idea, I mean, it sounds interesting, but I think we need to work it. But you know what, man? You delivered a great pitch, and I love your
Mm,
enthusiasm, and your
mm,
background is amazing. I'm going to make you an offer.
mm,
You've probably heard
mm,
sometimes that's been, but what you've never heard is, Iba, great idea. Can't stand you. Man, you're arrogant. You have no experience in this, but I'll invest. You've
mm.
never heard that, right?
No.
So, and I think that goes for customers as well. Now, again, if you're selling to consumers and they buy your product and there's no kind of one-on-one, then I would say that it's less important. But if
Mm,
you're doing a B2B pitch where you're going to need to implement the product, you're going to need to provide post-sale service, et cetera, then making that human connection is super important. So again, I would consider those first two questions: who am I speaking to, and what's my goal with this
mm,
particular pitch,
mm,
and then use tools that help you get there.
mhm. So, connection with the audience, humor, basically, it's all about trust. If they can
Mhm.
trust you, they can do business with you. What about culture?
Yeah. So culture plays a big role, right? But being here in Europe, one of the things that's having spent closing in on 23 years in Europe at this point is that culturally things are very different, and especially when I do things at the university in this a master's program, there's 70 students and they're probably from maybe 35, 40 different countries, and so culturally things are very different, and what I would say then at that point is that if you're pitching where it's not culturally diverse, So let's choose, a country like Japan, right? Very deep, strong culture. Is that you should learn a little bit about the culture before you go there, and you should try to implement that. Can you say hello in their language, right? I went to France a couple of years ago, and I gave a presentation, and I don't really speak French, but I learned how to say, hello. My name's Neil. I'm really happy to be here today.
Bonjour, Neil.
Yep. Je m'appelle Neil, right? I'm probably saying it poorly, but here was the thing. I said 3 sentences in French, and I went around the room, and every single one of them was smiling, and they all just lightened up. And then I stopped because I said, I'm not going to continue to butcher your beautiful language any further, right? But that little bit, it built some connection, and it built some trust. And then we ended up having a really great session. And we were together for about 4 hours after that. So I think that you can do that. But when you're in a multicultural arena, like we are often in Europe, right? Was it 28 countries within a 2.5 hour flight from Copenhagen Airport, which is the closest major airport to us. So you quite often you're pitching to multicultural audiences. Then I would think, don't try to serve one, right? Be yourself. But if you follow that structure, then what's really the NABC structure, what's really important will come through in the pitch itself. So again, consider the circumstances. It's all about context. If I go to Japan to pitch and the audience is 99% Japanese, I should try to do something culturally appropriate and make sure that I don't do anything culturally inappropriate, right? But if I'm speaking to a mixed audience, then I think, you should kind of be on the straight and narrow and focus really on getting to that yes without necessarily worrying about whether it's somebody from Greece who's saying yes or whether it's somebody from Spain who's saying yes.
So basically build connection, build trust.
Yeah, I mean, we're all humans, right? I mean, we can argue about countries' politics and things like that. And you've traveled too. You've been to other countries. I just spent a month in China last summer. And I can tell you that the Chinese people that I got to spend that time with are wonderful, amazing people. And you know what? They're just like you and me. They're just like you and me. They're curious. They want to learn. They want to give their families, opportunities and stuff like that. They don't, there was no, you're from the West and we're from the East. There was none of that because we're just human beings. So let's discount the politics, right? And when you're pitching to a multicultural audiences, if you can connect with them, and if this is based on a true story about a problem that your mother had, and now you're helping people to ensure their mothers never experienced this, I'm telling you, there's not a nationality in the world that's going to sit in that audience and not say, wow, that's an amazing story, and feel a connection to it.
Because we all can connect, and it's just like Daniel Kahneman in his best-selling book, Thinking Fast and Slow, who said, we make decisions based on emotions and we justify with logic.
Okay.
And so when you connect with people, you're connecting with them emotionally.
Yep.
So emotions before logic.
Yeah.
And this ties back to your idea of trust, building trust and connection.
So one thing that I would say in the pitch is absolutely try to connect on a personal level. But you also need to remember that pitches are generally delivered in some kind of business context. So think about how far you want to go with the personal stories. Let's say if that's the way you're going to go. You don't need to give every single detail, right?
No.
I would say that when you're doing something like that, as a pitch in a business context, it should be a little bit higher level, right? And there's probably a fine line between maybe, TMI, too much information, as opposed to making that connection. It's probably a very fine line. But that's one reason why before you ever pitch for real, you should always practice pitching. And you should not always practice pitching with people who know you and love you and know what you're doing. You should practice pitching to people who don't know what you're doing. Maybe they know you and love you, but they don't know what you're doing. So that they can give you some feedback going, wow, man, that was a great story, but I didn't really understand why I should care, right? Well, okay, now you know what you need to fix with that.
Yeah, I mean, you are a perfect example of that. I think I've called you many, many times, and I discussed my speeches. I even sent you text messages during the night about my podcast, about different speeches, and I wanted feedback from you
Yeah.
because I know you can give me honest feedback. We know each other,
Yeah.
but you can give me honest feedback that I trust.
Well, so the feedback thing, I think it's so important. And it's called different things, right? It's called, we don't really call it criticism anymore, where we're aware enough to understand, well, not everybody, obviously. There's still a lot of people out there that criticize. But if you're trying to really help somebody and not just inflate your own ego, you understand that criticism doesn't work. You understand also that even constructive criticism doesn't work. So what I do is I call it constructive feedback. Okay. Now I don't come, and you just said it, right? I don't come to, yeah, Iba, oh, that's great. That's so good. Iba, you're so good. You're so good. Because it's not about that. Look, if you came to me with a great idea, I would be the first one to say, man, that's an awesome idea, Iba, right? But if you're coming to me for feedback, I think you're expecting me, if I, let's say, don't agree, or if I see a way that you can improve, I think you're expecting me to give you that information. So when I pitch coach, even if they've delivered an amazing pitch, I will tell them it's amazing, but I'll say, but here's one thing I think that you can do to make it better. And again, it's about using constructive feedback, because if I said to you, Ibra, that was a horrible pitch, how do you get better from there? But if I say to you, hey, but here's the thing. When you explained the need, I didn't feel anything. I didn't understand the need. I don't really see this as a big problem. It really wasn't until you got to the benefits part where I thought, oh, well, maybe this is interesting, because the approach, I didn't get it all. You were just totally talking about technology and things like that. So what you need to do is you need to fine tune the need, not from your perspective, but from my perspective, right? That's also something in a pitch that you need to remember. You need to be speaking because you're trying to get to that. Yes, you need to speak what's important to them, not what's important to you. And a lot of people make that mistake too. So when you're doing that, okay, when you're putting yourself into the other person's shoes, you have a greater opportunity of getting to that yes, for sure. So making sure that you're clear in your delivery without making it all about you and what your goals are, you have a much greater chance of connecting with people without putting them off and getting to that yes for them to say, yeah, I think that this is something that's interesting for me.
And you addressed this before. What's in it for them?
Exactly.
As a listener, I'm always thinking, what's in it for me? And as a speaker, I'm always thinking about what's in it for my audience.
Right. If you're going to inform somebody, then I still think that you should consider what's in it for them. I still think that you should present it in such a way that's interesting for the audience. But because you're going to inform and you're not necessarily, the goal isn't to get to a yes, I'll throw it out there. It's probably less important to think about what's in it for them. I'm not saying don't. I do think you should. But in a pitch you absolutely have to. Because if you want to get to that yes, if you don't explain what's in it for them, good luck. You're not going to get to that yes.
Yeah. So getting to yes is the goal, but some people get no. And so when you, as a presenter, as a speaker, as an entrepreneur, when you hear a no, what's really happening in that room? What happened? Why did you get a no?
Yeah. Good question.
Let's say you have a great product, but you still get a no. What do you think has happened?
So I think this is going to be a tough thing for a lot of people to hear, because the first thing I think a lot of people want to say is, oh, well, they just didn't understand. The first thing you really need to ask yourself is, did I do a good enough job explaining? Did I make them feel the need? Did I make them say, oh, and I hate when that happens. Why hasn't anybody come up with something to fix that? Right? So when you make them feel that need, and then you very clearly explain how your solution is going to help them avoid that problem forever once they pay you. And then you give them 2 or 3 benefits, quick fire, right? You're going to get far more yeses. Again, you're never going to get 100% yeses because number one, people in the audience, they might not all have that same need. Number 2 is we could be sitting next to each other and my head is in a different place. But hearing no is hard for sure. Or, I would actually say hearing nothing is even harder. I would rather somebody tell me a polite no than nothing at all. I think we talked about this in our first session together. People ghosting you and running away. But if you focus on delivering a clear message and you're still not getting yeses, you have to take a look in the mirror and you have to say, all right, what is it that I'm doing? And again, this is where practice really matters. I would then call somebody like you and I would deliver my pitch and I would say, let me have it, Ibrahim. If why wouldn't you say yes to an offer like this? And I think that you would give me tough love. You would give me constructive feedback. Look, I didn't really, et cetera, et cetera. So if you can't look in the mirror and you can't, take responsibility for the no's, you might not be the right person to be pitching. And again, I'm not saying it's easy. As I run my own business, I get told no. Actually, I don't get told no that often. Most people just disappear because they're too afraid to say no these days, even politely, which that we could have another podcast on that. But you have to be able to accept the no and make changes to what you're doing until you start getting yes. In marketing, there's something called A/B testing. And what A/B testing basically means is I'm going to try 2 different things and I'm going to measure which one gets a better result. Now, the result might just be yes, no, right? And if A is getting no and B is getting yeses, well, then I'm going to do more of B. But if you only try A and you keep pushing A down people's throats and it keeps getting no, again, I don't know if Einstein really said this. He's the one that's credited for saying it is, insanity. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So if you're continually pushing out the same message and you're not getting any yeses, you got to change the message. And the best way to change the message, honestly, is to deliver the message in front of people who aren't afraid to give you constructive feedback. And if you don't get constructive feedback, right, this is also where you can take charge. Right? You don't have to be a victim. If somebody doesn't know how to give you constructive feedback, you can actually take charge and help them help you. So if you told me, Neil, that was a terrible pitch, the way I could elicit something constructive from you is appreciate the honesty. It's a little hard to hear, but I appreciate your honesty. Can you tell me a little bit, what specifically was it that maybe you didn't understand or that I didn't deliver well that I could improve on? And then you could even break it down in the need. Did you understand the need? No, I didn't get it at all. Who cares about plastic in the ocean, right? Again, just one problem.
Really listen.
You really got to listen. You have to be able to understand that when somebody gives you constructive feedback, they're giving you a gift because they're giving you a tool with which you can improve, right? I don't believe criticism is a gift, no matter how much people like to say, "Oh yeah, I'm just being honest." You know what? You can be. You might need to get the blooper, the buzzer out here. I don't know if you allow this kind of language, but you can be honest and not be a dick. Again, I'm sorry if you're going to have to, if you're going to have to blurt that out. But again, I believe that my feedback is honest. I believe that the feedback that I give people helps them to become better. And I've gotten good at it because I do it and I do it a lot, right? So if you're not good at it, if you don't feel comfortable with it, start doing it more often. Don't run away. Don't go in the other direction. Because when you can deliver constructive feedback as a gift, you can then more easily accept constructive feedback as a gift, meaning you can improve too. Because you know what? Nobody on this planet couldn't use some area of nobody on this planet doesn't have at least one area that they couldn't use a little bit of improvement in.
You gotta. It's all about self-awareness and really accepting and taking responsibility for the outcome.
For
But
sure.
I wanna go back a little bit to pitching. Now you're on the stage. You're delivering your pitch. What signals will tell you in the room, of course, with the audience in the room, that you are losing the listeners? So I'm pitching to you. Is there something I should be aware of that signals to me that I'm losing you, I'm losing the audience?
How many people are looking at this instead of looking at you? There's
Looking at what?
their mobile phone. Sorry,
Okay.
that's
No,
what
no,
I held up. It was my mobile phone. I'm part of a summer entrepreneurship program here in Lund, and as part of the kickoff, they have an inspirational afternoon where they get about 300 teenagers. I think they're 15 and 16 years old, and they get them, and they have some speakers and they have some entrepreneurs. And I've been honored to be asked to deliver I cook it down to 30 minutes, but it's a presentation about pitching because it is a program in entrepreneurship. So they do need to learn about pitching. So I'm not totally out of place. And given that, number one, Swedish is not my native language, right? It's a challenge for me. I can speak Swedish and I deliver it fine, but it's certainly not perfect. And the thing is that, right, it's in the summer. They do this as part of, like their summer programs and stuff. And the first time I did it, I was standing up and behind the audience the first time. And while people were up on the stage, I was looking down at how many of them were looking at their phones and not paying attention to the crowd. And I said, all right, I thought the guy who was speaking was great. I said, so if half of them are looking at their phones, Neil, you're going to be happy if 20% of them aren't looking at their phones. So that's one way, right? But again, I'm a really, really strong believer that you set the tone. And the first sentences that you say is you setting the tone to get as many people interested as possible. Now, in that case, I'm talking for 30 minutes. I'm not only up for 2 or 3 minutes giving a pitch. But if you can't keep somebody's attention in 2 to 3 minutes, you really need to reconsider the message, the content of your pitch. When to set the tone for teenagers, I get up there and the first thing I do is I tell a joke about myself, because they're going to notice directly that I'm not a native Swede. And the interesting part is that these days many of them are not native Swedes, and so I make fun of my poor Swedish, right? And then they laugh, and then I tell them, I empathize with them. I say, I get that, you don't want to listen to some old dude for the next 30 minutes talking to you about something like pitching. But then I challenge them. I said, but if you give me the next 28 minutes of your time, I guarantee you that if you pay attention and listen, you're going to learn something that's going to be valuable to you at some point in your life, whether you're ever an entrepreneur or not. And I get a lot of positive feedback about that. Do they all put away their phones? Oh, God, no. But again, far more than 20% are listening, and that means I've done my job. So I also think that practicing enough and being comfortable enough in your content to look out into the audience and notice if you're losing them, to pivot a little bit slightly during the audience. During your delivery, to try to get them back. Sometimes it's doable, sometimes it's not. But if you just keep on keeping on doing what you're doing, you're probably not going to get them back. So, do you have a joke that you could throw in the middle? Could you do something totally unexpected, like all of a sudden pull your mobile phone out of your pocket and just go, "Oh no, I don't need to take this call." You'll snap people right back into right back into what just happened. It's just one example. But if you notice that you've lost them and you continue on the same path, you probably have very little chance of getting them back. But take the lesson, right? Try to get feedback from somebody who was there, maybe the organizer, and just say, hey, where do you think I lost them? What could I do better? What could I do different next time?
Mm-hmm. This is basically about being present when you are in that room. And so that's why I really appreciate the fact that you said in the beginning, you have to be confident in the content with your message, right? If you know your content, if you know your message, you're going to be present on the stage when you're delivering your pitch, your message. And when you are present, you'll be able to pick up these clues, the ones you're talking about.
Yeah.
And when you pick them up, you can be flexible and adjust accordingly. But the problem I see often is a lot of people are up in their heads and they don't even notice when they've lost the audience.
Sure.
They have no idea they've lost the audience.
And
they're up in
I've
their
said
heads.
I've said it twice already, and I'll repeat it one more time. And I think what you just said, Iba, is a perfect example of why you don't want to try to memorize a script. When you're memorizing a script, you are in your head, because you're visualizing the words that you want to say in the exact order and the exact words that you want to say them in. And God forbid you mess up one word. Now look, everybody forgets what they're going to say sometimes, right? The organization where we met at Toastmasters, we have a competition every year, and it's a global competition, and the one who wins is declared the world champion of public speaking. And then they usually go on to have very nice professional speaking careers after that. And I saw somebody who had won the world championship of public speaking, who was a very well-established, successful public speaker in his career, get up on stage and draw a total blank in what he was going to say. And the thing is that, he didn't freak out. He owned it. People started screaming from the audience, "We love you. You got this," stuff like that. Because here's the thing. The people in the audience are rooting for you to succeed, right? But if you are trying to memorize a script, you're far more likely to miss a word and go off the rails because you are up in your head, right? Finally, when he came back, right, man, he nailed it. But he was up there and he's like, I don't know what I'm going to say next. He said, and then he just like, give me a second. And he stood there and he started thinking, and that's when people started shouting encouraging things to him. So yes, sometimes you're going to forget what you're doing, but I agree with you 100%. If you're not all up in your head, your ability to come back from that is significantly higher than if you're just saying, oh my God, what word was I supposed to say next? No, break that down, right? Think about what's the message that I need to deliver here, that I'm looking to deliver here. It's not about the exact word. It's about, can I connect the message to the audience? And I might use different words this time than next time. But as long as that message lands, doesn't matter.
Is there anything that I should have asked you about that I haven't asked so far?
Oh, that's a good one. No, I don't think so. Not specifically having to do with pitching. And I think people hopefully have gotten some tips from my answers. Not everything. It's hard to give everything A to Z on a 1 hour podcast. But hopefully people. Well, I think if there's one more thing that I would like people to take away from this, is to remember that pitching isn't just about entrepreneurs trying to get investments. A pitching really is a multifaceted communications tool. You can use it to pitch to investors, for sure, absolutely. But you use it to get sales, you use it to get customers, you use it to get partners. You can use a pitch structure to make sure that you get the right employee. If you're starting a company and you want a co-founder, you should feel comfortable with pitching. And then I would even dare to say that when you get the opportunity to maybe speak on a stage, you can incorporate some of your messaging from your pitches into that to get people more on board with what it is you're doing, and probably more important, why you're doing what you're doing. So, when you hear the word pitch, don't write it off thinking, well, I'm not seeking investment. I don't need to learn how to pitch. Again, some of the people that I train, they're not entrepreneurs. They're not even marketing people. They're engineers. And they have a responsibility to be able to communicate the projects that they're working on to make sure that they continue to get the resources, that they continue to exist, right? And this is probably a skill that when they were going to school and getting their engineering degree, they probably never thought they would need to learn how to pitch. But boy, when we're done and they realize how important it is, but also probably even more important that they can do it, what a change it is. So be open about the word pitch. Be open to how much learning how to pitch can help you in all aspects of your career, whether you're an entrepreneur or not.
All right. Neil, if somebody's listening right now and they have an idea, they have a presentation coming up, they're building a product and so forth, what one step can they take today or tomorrow to improve or get better at pitching?
Am I allowed to say that they should reach out to me to get coaching? Is that an acceptable answer? All right. So reach out to me to get coaching. But if not, then what I would say is if you have a pitch already, right? Look at the pitch and make sure that the pitch answers the two questions that I mentioned earlier, which is, do you know who you're speaking to? And do you know what the goal of the pitch is? And if not, you don't have to totally redo it. Again, not a fan of unnecessary work, okay? You don't have to totally redo it, but you do have to fix the message, fix the content, fix the structure to ensure that you connect with the people who you are looking to get the yes from. It doesn't have to be everyone, right? And that the pitch gets the yes that you're looking to get it from is the goal that you're looking to achieve. So an elevator pitch has one goal, and it's not to sell. An elevator pitch is to create curiosity so that we can then meet, so that then I can talk to you more, so that then I can sell, okay? So knowing that goal before you pitch, before you create your pitch, is super important. So those two things, if you haven't done that yet, then that would be the first thing, and probably not only the easiest thing, but the most effective thing that you could do to make your pitch more effective. And then step 2 would be practice, right? Practice by yourself, practice recording yourself. That's a great step. The thing is that if you only rely on that, you don't have the opportunity of getting that constructive feedback. So if you want to do it yourself, and if you want to record yourself till you get comfortable enough before you pitch in front of people to get that constructive feedback, absolutely. Your process is your process. And there's really no right or wrong, as long as you're doing it, as long as you're practicing. But at some point, you got to get in front of people who can give you that constructive feedback if you want to become better.
Be specific, be clear with your message and who you're talking to, and practice and practice. Don't be lazy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think especially if we talk about being an entrepreneur is not for the lazy, for sure. But anyone who's interested in pitching, it's because they're looking to advance something. You know, again, whether it's an idea or a project or their company or even themselves. And no, you can't be lazy when you're doing that. You got to take responsibility. And sometimes you got to do the tough thing. You got to look yourself in the mirror and say, what can I do differently? And it's not about necessarily what you're doing wrong, right? It's just, what can I do differently? So again, it's not about right or wrong. So don't look at yourself in the mirror and go, oh, you were wrong. No, you did your A/B testing. You delivered A. A didn't work. Now you switch to B. Okay. You're testing the waters in front of real people until you land on a message that resonates.
Neil, if somebody's listening right now and they would like to reach out to you, I know you have a website. Can you tell me what that is?
Yeah, so it's pitch PhD, like the doctorate degree.com. And my email address is neil@pitchphd.com. And it's spelled Neal. My parents had a nice sense of humor, decided instead of spelling it Neil like 99% of the Neils in the world, they spelled it Neal. But it's neil@pitchphd.com. And if you're interested in maybe the digital course, you can check out, it's Pitch Ninja, all one word, .online.
And we'll provide all the links in the show notes, Neil.
Great.
All right, Neil, one final question that I ask all of my guests. And that question is, if you could only give us only one advice of all the advice that you have, your wonderful experience and so forth, only one advice for a better, more meaningful life, what would it be?
You know, when I read this question, I kind of dreaded being asked it because am I giving worldly broad advice or am I talking more about the pitching? So I'll tell you what, I'll spare the audience my worldly grandfatherly advice, right? I'm not a grandfather. I'll say fatherly advice. I do have 3 kids. I'll skip that and I'll stick a little bit more to the subject of pitching. So, you know, part of the process is that you're going to get a lot of no's when you pitch. However, at some point, you're also going to start to get yeses. And this is especially important, let's say, if you're looking for a co-founder, an employee, a partner, an investor. Don't get so excited at the first yes that you make a big mistake. I've seen too many startups, small companies, get derailed by choosing the wrong partner because it was the first one to come along and say yes to them. And of course, I felt really, really bad for the startups, but it's not good for the person they said yes to either, right? So if you're worried about saying no to the first yes you got because you think nobody else is going to come along, my advice to you would be somebody else will come along. Okay. It's obviously I can never say there's always a second chance or a third or a fourth, but I can say it almost always. Those who have said no, there's always been other doors that have been open to them. So in this position of pitching, you're going to get no's. When you start getting those yeses, look, if it's a customer and they want to give you money for your service, the thing that you might want to be thinking about is, can I serve this customer properly, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe they're too big for where you are at this particular time, okay? So, be cautious, be brave enough to say no and hold out for the right opportunity. Because if you hop on the first yes and it turns out to be the wrong opportunity, again, I've seen companies, startups get destroyed from that.
Because they said yes too quickly.
Yeah. So especially on the investor side, investors do something called due diligence, which is they inspect everything having to do with the startups. But the startup doesn't do the due diligence on the investor.
Oh.
They don't investigate the investor enough to understand if this is going to be the right partner for them or not. Okay? Because when an investor comes in, right, I can tell you, investor deals are harder to get out of than a marriage, and we all know that about 50% of all marriages end in divorce. So, and even if it's not that drastic, you want somebody. Again, if we're talking specifically about investors, you want somebody who's going to be a positive asset to your company, for you, of course, but also for them, right? So, there are different statistics, but it's somewhere between 5 and 8 out of 10 investments fail and never get a return. And it's one of the reasons why when investors are so picky and they want to make sure that when they say yes to something, they have the opportunity to make a large return, right? And there's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of stress on that. So when they say yes to you, it's probably because they do see something in you. But if you don't see something in them positive that they can add to your company, then being able to make enough money together isn't enough of a reason, because chances are if you don't work well together, neither of you are going to make money on the deal.
That's great advice.
I hope nobody ever has to, I was going to say I hope nobody ever has to stay back. No, I hope nobody ever lands in the situation that like I said, I have seen happen, not super often, but enough to be able to give this advice confidently, that wait until the right yes comes along.
Wait until the right yes comes along. Neil, thank you so much, my friend. Thank you for your time. What I take with me today is use the structure NABC, the need, the approach, the benefit, and the competition. It was great having you back.
It was great to be here. I enjoyed it, and I hope your listeners got some solid advice from it for sure.
I'm sure they did, Neil. Thank you so much for your time.